Picture this. It's 1981. Jack Welch takes the helm at General Electric. At the time, GE is, well, an American icon, a huge, stable, deeply respected company. But underneath the surface, it was slow, bureaucratic, and totally unprepared for the global competition that was just around the corner. Fast forward 2 decades, and GE is the most valuable and admired company on the planet. This wasn't just a good run. It was a complete revolution that rewrote the playbook for the modern corporation. So, let's dive deep into one of the most significant corporate transformations in history. This quote? This is the key that unlocks everything about Jack Welch. You see, while everyone else was bowing down to complexity, building these intricate models and adding layer after layer of management, Welch saw complexity for what it really was, a way to hide mediocrity and a massive drag on performance. His obsession with simplicity wasn't just a nice saying, it was a weapon. He used it to slash through bureaucracy, force people to face reality, and drive clear, fast decisions. So how in the world did he pull off this historic turnaround? The key thing to understand is that Welch's approach wasn't just a collection of tips and tricks, it was a fully integrated operating system. Think of it like a machine where every single part was designed to work perfectly with all the others. And we can break this entire system down into 3 core pillars. This framework lets us see not just what he did, but how each piece reinforced the others to create this powerful, self-sustaining engine of performance. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start by setting the stage, really understanding the scale of the Welch Revolution. Then we'll do a deep dive into each of those 3 pillars: his radically simple strategy, the fast and agile boundaryless organization he built, and his culture of energized people. And finally, we'll wrap up by looking at the legacy of the GE way and what it means to. Okay, let's kick things off with some context. You know, most new CEOs are brought in because the company is on fire. Welch's genius was that he was paranoid. He saw crisis coming when GE was still the envy of the entire corporate world. He knew that the slow, inward-looking culture that made GE a success in the 20th century would turn it into a dinosaur in the 21st. His job was to fix a company that, from the outside, didn't even look broken. I mean, the sheer scale of this transformation is just staggering. Just look at these numbers. This isn't just a little bit of growth, it's a complete reinvention of the company. He took this sprawling mess of 350 different businesses, a lot of them in old, slow-growth industries, and forged them into an aggressive, market-leading powerhouse. It was a fundamental shift from a domestic manufacturer to a global force in tech, media, and finance. And let's be really clear, this was a revolution. It was executed from the top down with almost surgical precision. This was not some gentle, feel-good evolution. Welch basically implemented a kind of corporate Darwinism, where every single business and every single leader had to constantly justify why they deserved to be there. And this wasn't just about cutting costs. It was about constantly reallocating money, talent, and energy away from yesterday's businesses and pouring it into tomorrow's biggest opportunities. So that brings us to the first pillar of his system. Welch inherited a company that did everything from light bulbs to nuclear reactors, with hundreds of businesses and no real strategic logic holding them all together. His first job was to answer the most basic question of all: what businesses should we actually be in? He needed a simple, powerful, and totally non-negotiable rule to bring focus to all that chaos. And this was his answer: the legendary number 1 or number 2 rule. It is an absolute masterclass in strategic clarity. The beauty of this rule is that it's so simple to understand, but the implications are just profound. It meant that being average was over. Market leadership wasn't just a nice goal, it was the price of admission if you wanted to be part of GE. Because if you're number 1 or 2, you have power, you have scale, you control your own destiny. Anything less, and you're just getting pushed around by the market. From that one single rule, there were only 3 possible actions. That's it. This completely eliminated the endless debates and hedging that paralyzed so many big companies. A business would get a chance, and the investment, to become a market leader. But if that plan didn't work, Welch acted decisively. He'd either close it down or, more often, sell it. And this was completely rational. Selling a business wasn't seen as a failure, it was just recognizing that another company could probably create more value with that asset. To make this strategy crystal clear, he famously sketched out these 3 overlapping circles. It's a simple diagram, but it communicates a really sophisticated portfolio strategy. The core businesses, those were the legacy cash cows. The high-tech businesses were the engines for global growth that needed big R&D investments. And the service businesses, that was the high-margin frontier that would power GE's future. The rule was simple. If your business was in one of these circles, you got investment. If you were outside the circles, your days at GE were numbered. Total clarity. Okay, so once you have a focused strategy, the next question is obvious. How do you structure the company to actually execute it? And that brings us right to Welch's second pillar, creating what he called a boundaryless organization. He looked at the traditional corporate structure with all its rigid layers and silos, and he saw the enemy of speed. He believed it insulated leaders from what was really happening and slowed decision-making to an absolute crawl. This quote just nails his radical worldview. That old command and control hierarchy that built the 20th century corporation, it was now a huge liability. Welch believed that layers of management didn't add value. They just filtered information, delayed action, and killed good ideas. In a world that was speeding up, the company that could learn and adapt the fastest would win. And bureaucracy was the mortal enemy of learning. So he launched a full-on assault against 4 key boundaries. He attacked the vertical boundary by delayering, just ripping out levels of middle management to connect the leaders directly to the front lines. He smashed the horizontal silos to get different departments like engineering and marketing to actually work together. He broke down external boundaries by sharing information openly with suppliers and even developing new products with customers. And he erased geographic boundaries, making sure the best ideas from anywhere in the world could be used everywhere. Now, this whole boundaryless idea was made real through an incredibly powerful tool called workouts. And these were not just glorified suggestion boxes. They were these intense town hall meetings that basically flipped the hierarchy on its head for a day. Frontline employees would get together, identify all the needless reports, approvals, and processes, all the stupid stuff, and then present their solutions directly to their boss, who had to say yes or no right there on the spot. It was a machine for continuous improvement and a massive symbol of empowerment. Right. So you can have the best strategy in the world and the leanest organization, but they are totally useless without the right people to make it all happen. And this brings us to the third, and you could argue the most important pillar of the GE operating system, creating a culture of energized, empowered people. For Welch, getting the people part right was the ultimate competitive advantage. Everything else followed from that. At the absolute heart of his people philosophy was this crucial difference between leading and managing. He saw managers as people who controlled things, who complicated things, who just administered the status quo. Leaders, on the other hand, did 3 simple things. They created a vision, they put the money and the best people on the biggest opportunities, and then, this is the key part, they got out of the way and let their people run. Leadership was all about unleashing energy, not controlling. This 2x2 matrix is just brilliant. It perfectly shows how he evaluated leaders. He looked at 2 things. Did they deliver on their promises, and did they live the company's values? Now, the most fascinating and telling part of this whole thing is how he dealt with the Type 4 leader. This is the autocrat who hits all the numbers but crushes their people and ignores the culture to do it. In most companies, this person is tolerated, even celebrated. Welch's rule was simple and brutal. Get rid of them. That was his most powerful culture-defining move. It sent a message that how you get results is just as important as the results themselves. Welch was obsessed with what a lot of people dismiss as the soft stuff, but he argued it was actually the hard stuff of business. He drove 4 core values into the company's DNA, and he tied every single one to a hard business outcome. Speed meant faster decisions and beating competitors to the punch. Simplicity meant everyone was aligned and knew the plan. Self-confidence meant great ideas could come from anywhere. And stretch, setting these crazy, impossible-sounding goals, drove real breakthrough innovation by pushing people way beyond what they thought they were capable of. So let's bring it all together. When you look back at Welch's 2 decades at GE, his legacy isn't really a single product or one brilliant move. It's the creation of a complete, integrated, and transferable operating system for running a high-performance company. For a whole generation of managers, it basically became the gospel. The real key to his legacy is that Welch built a replicable system. This wasn't about his personality or his charisma. It was a teachable, scalable blueprint designed for one thing: winning. That's why the GE alumni, all the leaders who grew up in this system, became the most sought-after executives in the world. They were hired to go install the GE operating system in other companies, from Home Depot to 3M. And this just perfectly shows the flywheel effect at the heart of the system. The radically simple #1 or #2 strategy gave everyone a clear hill to climb. The boundaryless organization gave them the speed and the tools to climb it. And the culture of energized, self-confident people gave them the motivation to get to the top. Every pillar was essential, and each one made the others stronger. If you take one piece out, the whole machine just grinds to a halt. So we're going to end with this question, because it's a huge one for leaders today. The world has changed a lot.
The intense focus on shareholders has been challenged. The sometimes brutal rank-and-yank people management system has faced a ton of criticism. The crucial question for us to think about is this. In an age of digital disruption and a constant war for talent, which parts of this incredibly powerful operating system, the hatred of bureaucracy, the obsession with candor, the demand for market leadership, are more relevant than ever? And which parts need to be updated or maybe even thrown out? That is the complicated and enduring legacy of the GE.